Hello, welcome to You've Seen It Before, TV Reviews with Connections in Mind, and welcome back to another installment in my review and reaction series to each and every episode of Season 3 of The Orville New Horizons. If you've never seen one of my reaction episodes before, this is where I give my brief overview of the latest episode of whichever series I had to be reviewing at the time, what I liked, disliked, what I thought worked and didn't work, as well as some analysis as to certain plot development and character arcs that may seem familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. Just to get this out of the way, this will be a full spoiler review and reaction of the latest episode of The Orville New Horizons, so if you've not seen this latest episode yet, I highly recommend coming back when you have, because this will be full-on spoilers from here on out. So with that being said, without further ado, let's get into The Orville New Horizons Season 3, Episode 7, entitled From Unknown Graves. Now, much like a typical, or a more typical Orville or science fiction episode goes, we got our A, B, and C stories. Our A story involves the Orville opening up diplomatic negotiations with a species that is very much a matriarchal society, where basically the women are in charge and they treat the men in subservient roles. You know, it's basically, you know, it's basically the 60s in reversed, where, you know, the women are basically, you know, patronizing and objectifying men wherever, and, you know, they have control over all the power, and there's all that stuff. So the Union entrusts the Orville to start these negotiations, but in order to make this work, Ed and Kelly come up with this plan where they present the women on the crew in the lead roles, even in a bit of a subterfuge where now Kelly is the captain and Tala is the first officer, and Charley is now the chief engineer at this point. They all get promotions to sell the ruse, and the man, Ed, basically demotes himself to lieutenant for the sake of the mission, and Bortus becomes a lesser security chief on that one. So they're selling this ruse to go along with. Their thought is, well, we'll try to negotiate with these people and then kind of break it to them gently, ease them into the truth that, hey, men and women, they should be treated equally. That's what we treat them equally at that point. You should do the same sort of thing. There's all that going on. And, while Ed's feeling a little, all right, now I'm not in the captaincy role at the moment, or at least officially, and, what am I going to do? There's these two ships are orbiting this planet with an abandoned mining settlement, I guess, and they detect a life form where it's like, oh, it's an uninhabited planet. There's life sign. What's going on there? And so they send a team to investigate, and this is where the B story kicks in, because so we have the landing party that goes down. They investigate. They find a lab buried under in the ruins of this mining settlement. Obviously very unusual, where we see a Kalon greet them, and before the landing party, they obviously want to shoot it on sight because it's Kalon, it's a threat. However, they've quickly realized it's no ordinary Kalon, and accompanying this Kalon is a scientist, a cyberneticist, who basically says, "We found this Kalon. We call himself Timos. We found him. He crashed on this planet in the aftermath of the battle between the Kalon and the Union in Season 2, and he was very badly damaged. His other two Kalon crew didn't survive, and we discovered that, hey, in repairing you, we defanged them. They took out the guns that come out of their heads. They basically the scientists discovered that, hey, in the crash, there's this, they discovered this little subroutine or the component that if we tweak it back to a different setting, it allows the Kalon to feel emotions. And so it's essentially the Kalon equivalent of Data getting the emotion chip sort of thing. So it's basically the Kalon equivalent of that. And Tim is this Kalon. He can feel all these sensations, and obviously Ed and the crew are like, wow, this is a huge achievement, even if it's one Kalon. It's like, we gotta document this and send our findings to the Union. When, they bring them back up to the ship, they start analyzing the data. Obviously, Isaac meets up with Timos, and they want to talk out. Isaac hasn't spoken with another Kalon since the battle, and Timos broaches the topic of, hey, I feel all these things, and it's a wonderful thing, and you can feel these things too. Wouldn't that be great? And there's this dynamic of, all right, so Isaac, because of his, purely logical functions, he can't comprehend why, I don't need emotions. Why would I want that? It's not going to enhance my ability to perform my duties. But Claire, after a bit of wrangling, she says, Isaac, if we want this relationship to, work and grow and flourish, I need you to feel, and so I'm asking you to do this for me. He eventually ends up getting the procedure, and he gets to feel the emotions, and for a brief moment, he's like, yes, it works. I got this, these emotions, and it worked. And we're having a good date night, all that. We dance, and excuse me, we have they're dancing, but then all of a sudden, I was like, wait, the emotions, they're gone. What happened? It turns out the change that they made to make him feel these things, it resets. And it's due to the fact that while Timos was one of the original Kalon built by the humanoid race that the Kalon eventually wiped out, he was built a certain way, but Isaac was built by the Kalons themselves afterwards, so he's a slightly different version, and because of this, he can't have permanent emotions. Now, they say, oh, well, there is technically a workaround where we can make it work, reset his Isaac's hardware in a way where he can have permanent emotions. However, in order to do that, you're basically have to wipe out all the memories that he's accumulated at this point. And, he's basically, be reset to factory standards. And while Isaac's like, I'm willing to do this in order to, for you, Claire, to have you do that, there's the options like, Claire says the lines like, do I have a choice between your love or your soul? And, obviously she says, no, I won't let you do that. We'll keep you this way because you're the person I fell in love with the way you are right now. And that's where we leave that. It is important to note, during all this time, we actually, from the cold open, we get flashes back and forth to the Kalon homeworld prior to the humanoid creators' extinction that we see, we've known for some time now that the Kalon were oppressed and enslaved by their humanoid masters and the organic masters, and now we see get flashbacks to exactly how that looked at the time, all back and forth, and during all this, Charley, she's been having a tough time wrangling this, with Timos being another good Kalon and feeling things. And, he explains to her what, we were enslaved and they basically, added pain receptors to keep us in line so that they could torture us to keep us in line. And it became, more than just disciplinary. It became, almost sadistic pleasure in causing these Kalon pain. And that's what eventually caused them to rise up and kill all the organics, which, again, that's a scene that they show that this, it's all from the perspective of this one family with a Kalon, and it's like, oh wow, that is, all right, that was a really, they basically show up this Kalon just murking this family in their beds, even the kids, and it's like, wow, that's intense. And so Charley and Isaac, by the end they have this makeup scene where Charley basically says, I haven't been fair to you. I've been judging your entire race wrongly, and I've been letting my personal pain blind you from blinding me to seeing the nuance of your people's suffering and why you feel these things. And there's this understanding now between them, and obviously there's probably still more work to be done, and it'll probably happen in between episodes. But it's very interesting to see where that now Charley and Isaac are beginning to patch things up. so that brings me back to the C story, which again, the very brief C story. It's basically John and Tala are in their relationship. You know, they're having sex in their quarters, but obviously because Tala's a Selayan, she's very strong, and that obviously causes complications when, you know, they're having the rough and tumble in the bed, and, you know, she's breaking John's bones, and he's, you know, grinning through the pain of, you know, broken bones trying to make this work. But by the end, it's like, no, this ultimately isn't going to work, and I'm sorry for this, and, you know, so that's all that's going on. Personally, I think that was a little pointless overall, just because that was introduced kind of suddenly. But anyway, that's basically how all the events that happen in this episode. What I think work about this episode is there's a very very adequate filler episode. And what I mean by that is, yeah, we've got the A, B, and C story where you kind of flit around. They balanced it very well, and there's some good meaty sections of this. And again, it doesn't shy away from the deep and uncomfortable topics like, oh yeah, it's like we got this slavery thing going on here. That's not a good thing. But then again, the slavery leads to, you know, there's no good way to visually represent, oh yeah, they're starting a genocide at this point as a result of their enslavement. That's not a fun thing to depict in any context. So they show that that's a meaty, deep subject that they're broaching on that point. But also you get the funny moments. You know, really the main, you know, the bit funny sketch is, you know, the funniness of the role reversal, the men and women, haha, look at all this, and then you got the good gag of this. That, you know, Ed and Gordon are taking these bags off the shuttle of this of these alien dignitaries, and, you know, they're trying to you know, they obviously have a ton of bags, you know, bursting both arms, underarms, you know, stacked like that, and they can't see where they're going, and it's like, so there was a good physical comedy going on there. And what I liked most about this episode is it does raise a lot of questions. Like, what are the implications of the fact that, you know, the Kalon are very much capable of feeling emotions? It's just a matter of, you know, the right software settings, basically. How is that going to affect, you know, them going forward? Is there going to be a way to make that permanent going forward? I really hope this is not just a one-off of these things. But that's also brings me back to something that I think doesn't necessarily work, because I feel like the way they're setting these things up is, it really feels like these might be one-off concepts, and they might not revisit them. Or again, the fact that we're revisiting things from, you know, even back to season 1 throughout the season is fun and all, but that means that a lot of time's going to be passing between when something's brought up and where it might actually, you know, come back into importance again. And this is one where it's like, this is kind of a big deal here, because, you know, the unit's still at war with the Kalon. And I'm like, well, hopefully this goes on. And I'm frankly shocked that we're getting to the point where this is something that I thought where we were going. It looked very much like, for a second here, you know, Timos' story is very similar to Star Trek: The Next Generation's Borg with Hugh, and, you know, and again, the cybernetic organism that crash lands on a planet and in rehabbing, you know, gains individuality and emotions beyond what they thought was possible originally. And that episode ends with them basically, you know, weaponizing the Starfleet wants to weaponize his individuality. And I'm shocked that they didn't even broach this topic of, hey, if we can get all of the Kalon to feel like the impact of their actions, maybe that would stop the war. It's like, I'm shocked that they didn't broach that topic. Like, if they don't, like, bring that up as a possibility later on, that just feels like a huge missed opportunity at this point. Like, why bring this up at all as a possibility if you're not going to do anything with it, you know, in the grand scheme of, you know, Kalon Union War? But again, that's, hopefully they'll bring that in future episodes. Another thing that kind of I think didn't work is, it just kind of jarred me out of the scene for a moment when, you know, obviously, you know, John is going into sickbay to get these broken bones healed, and he's making, you know, this stupid excuse like, oh yeah, it was just a really hard workout, and I guess I pushed it a little too far. It's like, dude, you have a broken arm here. It's like, what kind of workout do you think you were doing? And when Claire and Isaac go to dinner, she casually mentions like, oh, I think there's something off with John. He came in with broken arms. Like, aren't you a doctor? Why are you discussing, private medical stuff with another member of the crew, even on a personal basis? Like, isn't there some ethical violation going on there with that? Doctor-patient confidentiality or something like that? That kind of shocked me out of the moment. That was just a weird bit of writing. That just should have been cut from the script entirely. But also, this is more of a nitpick. I mean, sort of the predictable route. Like, they have this plan of making, switching the roles. The women are now are seen in charge of the ship, and they're going to break into it gently. And obviously, the aliens have issue with it. It's like, you've been lying to us this whole time, and you expect us to be allies? And after that, it's like, what did you expect was going to happen when you made this plan? It's like, again, that's part of what the plot demands, and obviously they make some ground back up later. But man, it's like, that's just some predictable writing on that sense, and it worked just enough for me. But I can see how other people would be very put off by that, and let's just say. So, like I said, this is kind of a perfectly serviceable filler episode in my opinion. Not great, but not horrible. Some interesting nuggets to chew on going forward. Perfectly serviceable. I already mentioned the Next Generation episode here. Other things that I thought seemed familiar. Obviously, the storyline of the flashbacks of the Kalon uprising, their enslavement, and then rise up on there. There's obviously some parallels here with the Matrix, and more specifically the Animatrix, saying with the Second Renaissance, talking about the history of the machines before the uprising happened and how they were mistreated by humans on that front. There's also some shades of Doctor Who, the episodes of Planet of the Ood. Talking about how the Ood are a slave race and dealing with that context later on. The fact that the Union's trying to negotiate with these aliens, where it's like, how could we have anything in common with these people? And Ed makes the comments like, well, because of the breakdown in talks with the Krill, and because of the Kalon, it's like, and the barely holding it together with the with others. Like, we need all the allies we can get, and that's brought to mind the opening scenes of Star Trek Insurrection, where a similar sentiment is expressed by Picard on those scenes. Another thing that made me think of this whole plan of putting the women officers to the forefront and having the male officers step back a little bit in the roles. That actually reminded me of something from the Star Trek books, specifically Star Trek Enterprise: The Romulan War. This is book 2. I believe it was in book 2, maybe it was book 1, but there was a very similar situation where Archer's Enterprise, they are forced to go to a planet where they need supplies, and they find out it's a matriarchal society with very matriarchal society, where the women very much don't take the men seriously, and he basically promotes Hoshi to the captaincy in order to present an acceptable face to these aliens so that they can give them the repairs that they need. It's something nice that they can draw from the book sources as well. Something that modern Star Trek writers can learn a thing or two, especially Star Trek Picard for one. But those are the kind of things that I thought seemed familiar to me. But what did you think of this latest episode of the Orville New Horizons? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Do you agree, disagree? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my next TV reviews, which will be for both Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1 as well as Miss Marvel. Those have now concluded their first seasons, as well as my next movie review, which will be for Bullet Train, which comes out August 5th, I believe. So look for all those coming up. And if you like this video or any other video on my channel, please Give me a like, share, and especially subscribe. I'd very much appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for watching. Just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.